Hi, I'm Donald McIntyre, Senior Editor at the ETC Cooperative, and this video is about proof of work is not voting. 1. Voting as a pure conflict resolution device. A few decades ago, in evolutionary game theory, or the origin of evolutionary game theory, was started by John Maynard Smith and G.R. Price in a paper called The Logic of Animal Conflict. And the basic concept there was that within animal species there's a lot of conflict, but they also evolved methods to minimize conflict and to resolve conflict, because the constant existence of conflict imposes such a big evolutionary cost that it is not viable for the individuals of the species. So many species have developed ways of deciding who gets a resource, for example, territory or shelter or food or mating rights and water and things like that. For example, in between lions, when there's alpha males in an area, usually they mark their territory with urine, and in large parts and for most of the time, they tend to respect the territory of the other alpha males. This is a conflict resolution device, territory in itself, and many other animals do the same, because if they didn't have that device, they would be fighting all the time, and it would be too costly for survival of the individuals and the species in general. In certain species of fish, for example, when they want to mate, when there's two males, alpha males that want to mate with a female, usually whoever was closer or first to get to the female is the one that wins, and usually the other one tends to not fight or spend the energy and investment fighting, because it's too costly for them to be hurting each other and suffering the wounds, or even killing each other. No, sometimes even when one dies, the winner is so hurt that it's a big evolutionary cost for the winner. And there's many like that. There's many other conflict resolution devices in animals. In humans, there's a typical kind of conflict between humans, which is how to select the next leader when a leader is gone. For example, in apes, you have chimps and gorillas, that they have the model in groups where they have the alpha male, and if the alpha male dies or is sick or is too weak, usually there's a succession process. And if the succession process were violent all the time, then it would be for sure a large cost, evolutionary cost for that group. So usually when an alpha male is going away as the leader, the way they select the next one is they usually select a stronger one, or the one that has the best alliances, or it's just lucky, or it has a combination of the three. No, but if not, it's just by brute force. In a way, implicitly, it is imposed by brute force, because just by being the stronger one means that the weaker ones are not going to try to fight, because it would be too costly for them. So humans in particular, we can say that we had, in terms of electing the next alpha leader in groups, we had three eras. The first era is very similar to what I described in apes. It's the Caveman Era, say Homo erectus, or Neanderthals, or archaic Homo sapiens. We were groups of 50 to 150 individuals. We were usually related, so there was some trust between all the individuals and grouped in families. And whenever the alpha leader left or left for any reason or had to be succeeded, we have been using in the Caveman era, we had been using the model of selecting the one that was most fit, the strongest, and has the best alliances, and a little bit of luck, because you have to be in the right time, in the right place, no, to be selected as the alpha. Why is being alpha, digamos, an interest for the alpha himself or herself? It's because the alpha in groups, and this happens in many species, always have some benefits. For example, they get to eat first when there's a hunt or when there's food. They get to drink the freshest water whenever there's a source of water. They get the best shelter or real estate location whenever they occupy an area. Or they get to mate first in the case of wolves, or elephants, or even chimps. The alpha gets to mate first or have more mates than other males in the group. So there's many benefits for being an alpha, and in return, the alpha has to provide a service to the group, because the group, if not, is not going to follow that model, no? And the service usually is to provide leadership and coordination. Coordination in itself is a huge evolutionary advantage for any group of any species. Coordination, where there's ranks, where there's a leadership, where there's people who do things first, people who do things second, people who do things third, etc. And they determine the direction when they go to hunt, or where to migrate and things like that. This kind of coordination is what is the service that the alpha leaders provide in groups, and that doesn't, and humans are not an exception. Then when humans, we've been very successful, and as we grew, as our groups grew into tribes and city-states, then we invented the Monarchy Era. The monarchy is another conflict minimization device or conflict resolution device, and it's purely biological, or it comes from biology, digamos, the need for these kinds of devices. And basically, because the groups were too large and conflict was too costly, and the violence was so high, that we needed a new kind of way of resolving succession, no, in large populations of thousands, of tens of thousands, or hundreds of thousands. So monarchy was the solution to that, and basically is the general agreement that the descendants of the previous alpha are the ones who are going to be the next alpha leaders. It can be the eldest daughter, the eldest son, or by choice of the present, of the father or the mother. They can choose who are they going to, but usually it's by blood, and that's how it's resolved. Again, this doesn't mean that conflict is brought to zero. It's just minimized. Conflict is going to exist, and we know in history of huge civil wars between brothers in different kingdoms, because they were not happy that they were not chosen as the next alpha leaders or kings or queens. So that doesn't mean that the device in itself has not actually minimized and reduced or resolved conflict to a great extent in humans. Then as we continue growing and we became nations and large countries, especially in the last 300 years with the Industrial Revolution, explosion in population, etc., we developed a new system, because monarchy evidently lends itself for a lot of despotism and control and tyranny. We invented democracy that provides the promise that it returns power to the individual. But the way of selecting the next leader is by simple majority vote. Again, what I want to stress is that when we go to vote, it's a civilized and it's advanced philosophical digamos, product and device of thousands of generations of humans in thousands of years to reach this point. But we don't have to disconnect the need for decision-making devices or succession devices or conflict resolution devices to biology. These are in their origin biological needs that provide evolutionary benefits. In this slide, I compare proof of work with these three eras of how to make to resolve conflict. The Caveman Era, then the alpha leadership is imposed by brute force, but it is imposed. Imposed means that even if there's people, a minority, or whatever fraction of the group doesn't like it, they have to accept it. This is the key of conflict resolution devices. It happens in nature as well. If you have two bears and one already got to a place and marked it as their territory, the other bear doesn't like it, but they accept it. It is imposed to him by this conflict resolution device, which is to respect territory, that it is imposed that you have to lose and you have to go and look for your territory somewhere else. So in these conflict resolution devices, there are losers and there are winners. It's not that it deletes or it does away with the concept of winners and losers. In the monarchic era, then the alpha leadership is imposed by blood, but it is an imposition. And in the voting era, the alpha leadership is imposed by the majority. This is something that is important to understand. In the blockchain industry, there's pure permissionlessness. There's no conflict to resolve. There's only merit, free choice, and adoption. In the systems that we evolved for conflict resolution in purely subjective and human decision making, they're usually imposed, especially voting. In voting, if you think about it, when you live in a nation and you want a certain politician to win an election, if the other side wins by 50% plus one vote, you lost, and one half of the population lost, and they have the leader that they do not wish, but they have to accept it. So there is an imposition. In the blockchain industry, it's only merit, free choice, and adoption, and I'm going to talk about this in a minute. Voting not only is an imposition system, however, albeit how much it reduces violence, and it's really truly a conflict resolution device, and it's been great for humanity, but it is a bad decision-making device. Would you prefer for an experienced pilot to fly a plane or anyone voted by the majority? This is a rhetorical question that illustrates how voting per se, although it is a good conflict resolution device, it is good for that, and we can thank voting and democracy for that, but it is a bad decision-making device. How many times we see that it's so obvious that a leader has been chosen and that is clearly not a good leader, and like that we cannot have, for example, if we're going to have brain surgery or heart surgery or heart transplant, have whoever is going to do the surgery be voted by a majority, evidently. So voting is not a good decision-making device, and not only that, it can be manipulated, and I'm going to talk about that now. 2, voting and the illusion of individual participation. Voting really tricks us to believe that we are actually influencing the outcome. The truth is that in large groups, our influence and choices when voting are extremely diluted. For example, in a nation of 20 million people, say that they all vote, our vote is just 1 in 20 million at most. So we have nearly zero influence on the outcome. The forces that really count in voting are the charisma of dishonest leaders and their ability to manipulate the crowd. This is the standard, not their virtue or their capability to govern. Examples in the blockchain industry of these things are two. One was a failure and the other one was a success. In 2016, there was the DAO hard fork in Ethereum. Now I'm doing an analogy if this is voting were a generalized way of making decisions in the blockchain industry. In 2016, there was the DAO hard fork where in Ethereum, that was one single chain, a hacker stole $50 million. So people said, okay, let's reverse the chain manually, violating immutability, but at least we're going to return the money to the rightful owners. Well, that's a huge failure. It was done, and it was a huge failure because it was done because the great majority of people agreed with that, because they didn't understand the principles of the blockchain industry. And Ethereum today is a blockchain that has in its history a reversal of funds. When a blockchain, by definition, it has to be immutable, censorship resistant, and permissionless. If you introduce human intervention, then you turn immediately into a traditional system. The other case, which was the successful case, was in Bitcoin in 2017. There was something called the block size war, and it was a success because even the great majority wanted to increase the block size in Bitcoin. The minority that were the cypherpunks, the people with principles, the people who understood the true objectives and goals of blockchain, which is trust minimization, permissionlessness, censorship resistance, and the non-intervention of humans, they won, even if they were the minority. And today Bitcoin stayed with small blocks. The fork that went away, called Bitcoin Cash, is a failure as a blockchain, and they have larger blocks, and therefore it was a total success, because in that case it wasn't a matter of voting or popularity contest or anything. In the end, what prevailed was the rationality of the technical side and the philosophical side. 3. Proof of work is merit, free choice, and adoption. Because of its features, proof of work has merit by determining the winner of the next block and paying it the reward by pure competition, ability, and individual risk. Miners compete, they come from anywhere in the world, they can connect, disconnect whenever they want, and they can only get the prize or the reward by competition, by their ability to have the best operations, by investing in electricity, and running the individual risk. Free choice by enabling all participants, whether miners or nodes, to participate voluntarily from anywhere in the world to produce blocks or to verify them if they wish. And free adoption by enabling all participants, whether miners or nodes, to select a chain they wish to follow with no penalties nor impositions of any kind, and in absolute isolation without any external influence. For example, in the case of when there was this controversy in 2016 in Ethereum, so after they did the reversal and they broke the principles, Ethereum Classic continued as the original chain because it was the people who did not want to do that and violate the principles, and they followed a code is law philosophy. So the original Ethereum continued, and Ethereum, the one that we know today as Ethereum, they broke away and they forked to be able to have this chain with the reversal of funds, and this shows how permissionlessness and how your free choice and your adoption of whatever system you wish is something that is a characteristic of blockchains. And when I said before, in voting, it's not that. In voting, for example, in those two choices, in 2016 in Ethereum, whoever didn't agree would have to comply because the vote was that we had to reverse the chain. In the case of Bitcoin, the great majority would have to have complied with the participants. If that were the system, it would be by imposition, or it would be the other way around. Bitcoin would have failed and would have today big blocks, and everybody would have to accept the outcome, because that's how voting mechanisms work. Voting mechanisms have imposition to people who don't want it. Blockchains have no imposition to anyone who doesn't want anything. Everybody can have free choice and adopt with whatever they wish. 4. Proof of stake is voting and imposition by majority. This is important to understand because proof of stake is really a centralized system, and it doesn't have permissionlessness, censorship resistant, or anything like that. In proof of stake systems, the core of the imposition mechanism, I call it this because it is not a consensus mechanism. Consensus is when you just agree just by the truth. Imposition means whether it's true or not, because there was a vote, you have to accept it. Is that one of many stakers is randomly selected to create the next block. Then it sends it to a selected committee of other stakers who vote by majority if the block is valid. And then they send it and impose it to the rest of the network at large. So because proof of stake systems use voting and are capturable, this is because it's a top-down system. The stakers are basically the elites that we see in normal societies. And it's just the elites that they agree with other elites, which is the correct state of the network, and then they tell the rest of the population what they have to follow. So it's basically a top-down way of imposing the system to the rest of the network. And this is why it is capturable, and it's not decentralized, censorship resistant, immutable, nor permissionless. Once you have something that goes from the top, from the head to the rest of the body, and if you can capture the head, then you can capture the whole body. And this is the key of why it's not decentralized, censorship resistant, immutable, nor permissionless. And I have proof of this because Ethereum, since it migrated after the merge to proof of stake, it has been actually captured. This is something that the market has not realized yet. Sometimes the market doesn't realize things, or maybe the market is valuing, okay, even if it's captured, it's valuable because it's a more scalable level layer 2 system or something like that. But 73% of the blocks of Ethereum today are censored. This is something that is incredible that has happened. It was not the original intent of Ethereum. This is why Ethereum Classic is the real Ethereum and the original philosophy and the original goal of this blockchain, because Ethereum Classic is going to remain proof of work that lets anybody in the world confirm transactions, and it's impossible to censor. But here we have then proof of stake, because of the reasons that I explained in my previous slide, is totally captured in the case of the largest proof of stake blockchain in the world. And they're all the same. 5. Proof of work is pure permissionlessness. So proof of work, the mechanism has 5 features. 1, it enables consensus. Why? Because if you have such a large computing power, spending so much electricity producing a block, and then they send the block to the rest of the network to be verified and to adopt freely, anyone who wants to participate receives this block. And even if they receive many blocks of imposters, just by verifying that the work was done and that all computing power was used and that all that electricity was used to produce that block, makes it very easy to differentiate by any node operator anywhere in the world which is the correct block, because you're going to receive 10, 20 blocks where one is the true one and 19 are from imposters, and the imposters do not have that computing power and ability to use to create that hash with so much difficulty and using so much electric power. So it's more or less like if you have to check if a gold bar is genuine, and 10 people come to you and bring you golden bars, and 9 are made of plaster and wood, but they're painted with gold paint, so they look exactly like a gold bar. And 1 person brings to you a real gold bar, and just by weighing them and touching them, you're going to realize which is the true gold bar, because it's 100 times heavier than the ones made of plaster and wood. And this is how the blockchain, the proof of work blockchains enable consensus, and this is done in total isolation. You don't need to consult with anyone, ask for permission. Just by receiving the block, you already know it's a true block, and this is how consensus is achieved in Ethereum Classic and Bitcoin. Two, the same method enables chain selection for free exit and entry. So in the same way that I can know which is the right block, I can know which is the right blockchain. I never participated as a miner or as a node operator in Ethereum Classic, and I just come now out of the blue. I just checked the chain, and just by checking that the work was done, I know which is the correct chain. Even though there's 100 imposter chains trying to convince me otherwise, I will know without checking with anybody else, without asking for permission or asking the CEO of a company or anything. I know which is the correct chain. So this frees all the participants to enter the blockchain, leave, exit, even when there's electricity outages or technical problems of mining. A mining firm can get out of the chain and then come back whenever they want from wherever they want in the world, as long as they have an internet connection. Any node operator or any miner can participate in the network. Three, it protects transactions. Bueno, this is the thing that everybody knows, because it requires so much work to create the blocks. To revert blocks of the past, you would have to repeat all that work, spending all that energy. So even if the attacker is an attacker with a lot of resources, it would need so much computing power and to spend so much money in energy to redo the blockchain to the past, that is, in practice, it is impossible, or at least it is anti-economical. There's usually no sufficiently big transaction or block to revert that would give you the benefits that would be higher than the cost of reverting a past block. So this is the thing that everybody knows. It's a barrier to falsify the network in a way. 4, imposes a cost to create the money. This is the economic benefit, and this is the original goal by cypherpunks. They wanted to create gold, but on the blockchain. And the miners, what they do in proof of work is similar to miners in the real world. That's why they're called miners, which is they have to spend a lot of mining capital to extract gold from nature, and this is why gold is scarce and valuable. So the fact that proof of work blockchains impose a real physical cost to create the money each time they create a block makes that money, in this case Ethereum Classic, or in the case of Bitcoin, similar or an analogy of digital gold. This is why Ethereum Classic is called programmable digital gold. These features combined guarantee, and these 4 features combined guarantee the key benefits of a true blockchain, which are decentralization, censorship resistance, immutability, and thus permissionlessness. In conclusion, 6, this is why anyone can enter or exit the proof of work blockchain whenever they want, adopt the chain they wish, and do all of this with no top-down obligation or impositions, but their own will. They do this in complete isolation just because they want to. There's no imposition by majority voting. Majority voting is the top-down imposition to use the block and the chain that the majority voted. This is proof of stake, for example, with no other option. This is the implicit agreement in voting mechanisms. Proof of work is permissionlessness. Proof of work permissionlessness is diametrically opposite to imposition by majority vote. And this is why I say that proof of work is not voting. Thank you for watching this Ethereum Classic video. To learn more about ETC, please go to ethereumclassic.org. Thank you very much.